A Pan-Africanist is a leader, an individual who loves Africa. A Pan-Africanist is a leader, an individual who protects Africa. A Pan-Africanist is a leader or an individual who supports and acknowledges the beauty of Africa. Over the years, and within some very few months, my Kenyan president has been lauded as a Pan-Africanist. I don't dispute that fact. In fact, I support and I respect the opinions of such people who laud him as a Pan-Africanist. But when I see and I check the definition of a Pan-Africanist, I find no liking, I find no characteristic of a Pan-Africanist in the Kenyan president. According to statements written about Pan-Africanism and a Pan-Africanist, the definition of a Pan-Africanist is very simple and very straightforward. In fact, Pan-Africanism is defined as a political doctrine and a movement with the aim of unifying and uplifting the African nations and the African diaspora as a universal African community. When we look at who a Pan-Africanist is, we find that a Pan-Africanist is an individual who is Afrocentric. When we talk about Afrocentricity, that is an individual who advocates for Africa, an individual who respects Africa, and an individual who is ready to protect African resources, an individual who will solicit for the unity of the continent, an individual who believes in the beauty of Africa and the strength of Africa, and most importantly, an individual, when this person is a leader who protects Africans, who believes in the welfare of Africans. My president has been going to these conferences organized by African leaders and African presidents, and at the same time attending global conferences organized, such as the one which was organized recently in Nairobi, Kenya, during the Africa Global Climate Change Summit. And then another one was organized by the United Nations, UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly. When attending African conferences, you will find the Kenyan president, His Excellency President Ruto, speaking very toughly on Africa for Africa and agitating for African unity and stressing the need for African countries to focus on the development of themselves without relying on foreign governments. The same president, when he attends global conferences, for example, the one which they attended, the UNGA conference, the United Nations General Assembly conference, which was attended by, among others, the United States President Joe Biden. When he attends such conferences, you will find the same leader talking very toughly and talking very boldly about these foreign countries and embracing their support for Africa. The same president, when you come back home, the same president is implementing the instructions of the International Monetary Fund on the citizens. Why am I saying so? We discussed the issue of the Kenyan taxes, and we did agree that the Kenyan taxes are implemented by the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Why were we saying such statements? We said that when IMF gives African countries loans and any other country across the world, those loans comes with very strict conditions, and part of these conditions are the tax mechanisms that every government will implement to make sure that money is collected and returned back. The same applies to the Kenyan government. The current administration imposed very heavy taxes on its citizens under the instructions of the IMF. The IMF gives them loans, and these loans comes with very strict instructions. you must implement this form of taxes. You must structure your institutions this way. And that is what the Kenyan president implemented in the country. If this Kenyan president was a Pan-Africanist, if this Kenyan president really loved Africans, and if this Kenyan president was concerned with the well-being of Africans, the implementation of these taxes could have been halted. I say that if the Kenyan president, His Excellency Ruto, loved Kenyans who are Africans, then the taxes which are currently in force in the country should have been halted. Implementing the punitive taxes on the citizens means that this is an individual who doesn't love Africans. This is an individual who is not concerned about the welfare of the people. This is an individual, a leader, who is focused on implementing the affairs, the interests of foreign governments. When I was starting this discussion, I did say categorically that a Pan-Africanist is somebody who is Afrocentric, a person who loves Africa, a person who believes in the strength of Africa, a person who is committed to protect the well-being of Africans, and a person who is focused on protecting African resources. The same president in my country, Kenya, is one depending on, let me say, handouts from these foreign governments. Kenya understands that various African countries are currently at war, are unstable. Just to name a few, in fact, our neighbor Sudan is currently in political turmoil. Sudan is still fighting to date. Ethiopia is still unstable. Congo DRC is still unstable. Libya is still unstable. West African countries are still unstable. If this individual was a Pan-Africanist, an individual who loves Africa, and an individual who is concerned about the well-being of Africans, and who is concerned about the security of Africa, the first priority was to sort out these wars in Africa. In fact, Sudan is just our neighbor. The president bypassed the war in Sudan and is currently sending Kenyan soldiers to Haiti. Haiti is not a country in Africa. Haiti is not a country in Africa. There is war in Haiti and there is war in Sudan. Sudan is an African country and it is just our neighbor, a few miles from Kenya. The Kenyan president bypassed Sudan and said that peace in Sudan can wait and peace in Haiti can be solved now, as the peace in Sudan and Congo and Libya and the rest of African countries, in fact even Somalia, is currently unstable. The president, because he was given 14 billion by the US government, he decided to pocket the handouts and send Kenyan soldiers to Haiti, not forgetting that Sudanese people are killing themselves, forgetting that Somalis are killing themselves, forgetting that the Congolese are killing themselves. If the Kenyan president was a Pan-Africanist, then Sudan was to be a priority, Congo was to be a priority, Somalia was to be a priority. Because he is not a Pan-Africanist, he is not concerned about the welfare of Africa, he sent Kenyan soldiers to Haiti. And because he is not a Pan-Africanist, he implemented heavy taxes on Kenyans upon the instructions of the International Monetary Fund, with complete regard of the interests of the well-being, of the welfare of Kenyans. Can we now admit that the Kenyan president is not a Pan-Africanist based on these resolutions and these reservations?